Alright guys, so thanks for joining me. It's been a little while. I thought I would jump on and just let you know a few things that I learned at the Eating Disorders and Obesity Conference. I've been there for the last 4 years, so I've been every year since the start of it. And I jumped on the committee this year, which was really cool, and we ended up being really, really happy with the whole range of presenters over the couple of days. I was actually asked to chair the open and the close and the keynotes, which was a really cool experience. And as another conference chair said to me, it's really cool, Glenn, because you have to pay attention to everything that's going on. So it's actually an awesome way to learn. Hey, Lauren. Hey, Rose. Yeah, it's an absolutely awesome way to learn. And there were a few things that kind of shook up or really kind of extended my understanding. So I wanted to kind of share them with you and see what you think. The first one is probably the most controversial and really has shook my thinking up the most. It's an interesting conference, the Eating Disorders and Obesity Conference, because I think that a lot of people feel like those people who are treating obesity, so those people that work in the weight management space with bigger people, are kind of working counter to those people that work in the eating disorders, based on this sort of common understanding that that diets promote eating disorders. But there were a couple of the keynote presenters that shook my understanding of this a little bit. And the first was a lady named Dr. Evelyn Smith. So she is the head of EDOC, the Eating Disorders and Obesity Centre at the University of Sydney. So she sort of set up to research both eating disorders and obesity. And it was really interesting that she showed us in her research, and I've got to do more research into this, so I'm super keen to hear what you think, but she showed us that there wasn't any good research to show that weight-focused dieting in general led to eating disorders, which is very different to what we commonly think. I sort of work in the obesity, and even though I don't like the word, and the eating disorders space. What she did make a differentiation was between supported dieting and unsupported dieting. So what she showed was that, that general, if you go and see, say, a dietitian or a qualified nutrition professional, that was, according to the research she was presenting, completely different to if you did your own type of a diet, which sort of makes some sense. Then towards the end of the conference, Christine Morgan, who is the CEO of the Butterfly Foundation, Australia's sort of #1 advocacy group for eating disorders, suggested a similar thing, that the standard sort of treatment for weight management, the weight loss treatment, wasn't shown to result in an increase in eating disorders. And the differentiation that she made there was a sort of a standard diet versus an extreme diet. And what she showed in the research she presented was that those average, so to speak, or sensible kind of weight loss diets, they don't necessarily put people at a higher risk of eating disorders, whereas the extreme ones actually put people at a much greater risk. I've got some notes here. I think that the number there was 18 times more likely to develop an eating disorder if you follow an extreme diet. So it was interesting that I think people who do work in the eating disorder space often will have that feeling as if any diet will put you at a higher risk of eating disorders. Whereas what these guys were sort of saying was that's probably not necessarily going to be the case if you're doing a supported diet, or if you're doing a more balanced type of a diet. So, hey Monica, so that was an interesting thought for me, and I'd be keen to hear your thoughts. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm sort of going to jump on board and do lots of weight focused diets with people. I might not bag out the sensible, supported ones as much as I have in the past. But, look, I have to do more research and actually read the studies they were presenting. But I still think that there was nothing in there that showed me that, even though it might not be as harmful as a lot of us might have thought, there was nothing in there to show that it actually was effective in the long term. So for me, I sort of think if you're going to do something that's going to cost you a lot of money, potentially take a lot of time and a lot of energy out of your life, even if it's not going to harm you in terms of giving you an eating disorder, it may actually harm you in terms of just wasted time, energy, and money. So it's interesting. Hey, Chrissy, good to see you. Yeah, you think it makes sense. It sort of did make sense, and it was a bit of a swinging back towards the centre in my thinking, although I've got to do a lot more research. Look, the second thing that I wanted to talk to you about was this link between Instagram and body image. All social media, but particularly Instagram and body image. Lady named Carmen Papaluca did a great presentation on, and it basically shows that, the more we're looking at these thin ideal images from celebrities, but also from your friends, it really puts a big downer on your body image. So she presented some of her research on that and some other research. So we kind of know that. But it was really interesting for her to be exploring a couple of things. One of those things was that she was looking at why people use Instagram so much. And I think it really came out to me that this is really part of our ecosystem, especially for younger people. So that recommendation of just get off it might be pretty hard for people. I know certainly I have a lot of clients that we encourage to get off it, and some of them are successful, but some of them do feel that very strong pull for all of those reasons, all of the value that they find in it, back to the Instagram. So that was interesting. The other interesting thing that we discussed in that presentation was that Carmen was basically researching these groups of girls to find out why they were, using the Instagram so much, or what their experiences were on their body image. But she found that the actual group itself kind of became a bit of therapy. And these girls realizing, holy hell, this, the prettiest girl in the group, or the girl who gets the most likes, was actually experiencing these body image issues herself. And I think that matches my experience with people completely. I'm in a really interesting space where, given some more of my public stuff that I'm doing, I get Instagram models every week contacting me saying, Glenn, I'm out of control. I don't know what I'm doing. My eating is all over the shop. I feel terrible about my body. And then I actually get this unique microcosm into that, and at the same time see what they're displaying to the public. And these guys might have 40, 80, 120,000 followers, all following down that path and seeing the ripped abs and that peach bum and all of those things that girls are looking for today, and imagining that that's what's going to get them a happiness in their body. And I think it, my experience with seeing those girls and talking to them on Instagram, and also Carmen's research with having the girls talk to the other girls, really helped to expose the myth that having this perfect body actually gives you a great body image. And Monica, you absolutely agree, which is really cool. Not quite sure which part with, but let us know. It was really interesting because one thing that Carmen talked about, and I think that I experience this a lot with my people, is that sometimes the media literacy, knowing that those images might be harmful for you, and knowing that they're photoshopped, or that the person's taken 50 photos to get that one right photo, just actually intellectually knowing that is not necessarily enough to help to stop you from internalizing that thin ideal. And it was really interesting. A guy named Associate Professor Kevin Brooks. He was one of the keynotes, the very last keynote of the whole conference, and he was just fantastic. He's actually confessed to knowing not very much about obesity or eating disorders, but being really interested in human perception and attention. And I think, a lot of us know that if we're constantly seeing these thin ideal images on Instagram, on Facebook, on TV, on ads, in magazines, then that's not good for our body image. But there is this question of, well, why actually is that? And so what he's just starting, but he's doing this beautiful, very scientific research on what actually happens when we view these warped images, either smaller or bigger than the average person. And he was able to show us through what we call perceptual after effects that viewing lots of these images either way actually distorts your sense of what's normal. And this is not a sort of a cognitive, logical, change in your belief system. It's actually your visual perception of what is normal. So for example, he showed us if you view lots of images of very thin people, then your perception of what is normal actually gets skewed towards thinness, thus making you feel as if you are a bigger person. So that's perceptually, but he also showed through attention that if this happens to you, then you are more likely to actually pay more attention to people who are thinner. So in your visual field, obviously there's a million things in our visual field all the time. That's why you're hopefully paying attention to me and not the printer behind me, because our minds actually choose what we're paying attention to. And what he was able to show is that on top of that warping of our perceptions, we actually are also more likely to then pick out in a visual field those thinner people. So we're just comparing ourselves to those thinner people. And I thought that was really, really interesting because it shows us on a very perceptual level, even just visualizing lots of these images is really, really damaging. Chrissy said it's tricking the id. It's absolutely, it's going almost straight into your subconscious. And Rose says it is hard to know what's normal. Absolutely. What Kevin sort of suggested was that it is potentially problematic for us to see lots of thin ideal images. And also he felt it might be potentially problematic for us to see lots of big images. And so for me, I take it to mean that in the media, it would be wonderful if we just saw a whole range of shapes and sizes and helped us create this unconscious norm of diversity. Yeah, Monica says, interesting. Having young adult daughters, I understand the perspective and also the Instagram references. Absolutely. It's one of the things that I'm sort of moving more towards, helping people understand that the words I use are, you can't unsee those images. And I think that they are so powerful that sometimes it is better for us to reduce our exposure to them. So my recommendation there very firmly is unlike, unfollow, unsubscribe for anything where you get a lot of thin ideal images. In our body image workshops and our body image program, which is coming up, we do talk about exactly what to look for and exactly how to do that decluttering. But if you're sort of picking up what I'm putting down there, I would really encourage you to do a whole spring clean, a whole declutter of your social media, and a lot of people are very surprised with the benefit of that. I actually think that with some of especially my younger girls that I work with and younger boys, more and more with the eating issues, I feel like I almost can't do my job in an hour a week when they're seeing so many of these thin ideal images. Look, the third thing that I wanted to talk about, which was really interesting, is we don't do too much in this space, but again, I'd love to hear your thoughts, is this issue of childhood weight management. Like I said before, I don't really like the term obesity, but that's what the way they talk about it still in these clinical conferences. The first thing was that Professor Andrew Hills, he's been someone who's been working in this weight management space, in his words, since before it was popular to work in this space. He presented some pretty sensible and pretty down-to-earth ideas on just helping our kids take care of themselves. And it was almost, for me, it felt like, while we were at an academic conference, almost like let's get back to nature. Let's get back to doing some sensible things. He talked about, kids these days, they have so much more screen time. They're outside so much less. The food they eat has more energy in it, but less nutrition. And so it was almost like a sort of a moment of clarity, but also a kind of a call to action to say, you know what, it's letting kids not take great care of themselves is really not setting them up on the right foot for their future. It does affect young kids psychologically and physiologically, and potentially for the rest of their life. Interesting. Lauren said, I did exactly that with cleaning out my Instagram feed, and it worked a charm. Definitely. Within a week, I picked up on how less obsessed and how consumed I was with body image. That's really cool, Lauren. That's really good to hear. And I think the coolest thing, apart from your story, Lauren, is that so many people have the same experience. Often when I do body image work, I know it's frustrating for me sometimes because it's a game of inches, and I know it's frustrating for my clients too because they've got to work so hard for small changes, but I feel like this is a very bang for buck thing to do. Let's go back to the childhood obesity. I've just distracted myself, sorry. So yeah, Professor Hills was talking about just the importance of giving our kids the best start, but I definitely cannot stop there because another presenter, Wai-Kwan Chislett, she presented some beautiful research to show us that in Australia at least, and I don't know what it's like in other countries, we're actually really not well set up to tackle the issue of when kids do get bigger, and that there was just all sorts of varied interventions. She's doing her research on the various things that we do to help bigger kids, and it wasn't very pretty. There was a couple of places in Australia that are very, very well set up, but she talked about the importance of really understanding that this challenge is so complex. And there are so many factors involved, and it is really resistant to change. And so she warned us against creating simplistic solutions for people who have bigger kids, because it's mainly, of course, it's the parents who are coming in, and it was interesting that she suggested that some fairly innocuous sounding sort of public health messages, like, with a few simple things you can really help your child's weight. When we kind of drilled into them, she talked about the understanding that just simplifying it in that way could really be quite stigmatizing for parents, and that I understand that completely working in the adult weight management space. Simple ideas of, that's just what you eat. You just got to exercise a bit more, just eat a bit less, and get 8 hours sleep and you'll lose all the weight you want. Just that simplification actually stigmatizes bigger adults, and I could see why that would similarly stigmatize the adults of bigger kids. So I suppose one of the things that I did want to say there is that, over the course of this work, I met some people who were involved in treating kids in this space, and they were lovely people, they were smart people, they were very caring people, And I think I would encourage you, if you do want to do something to support your kids, find the right place. And I would sort of encourage you to find someone who's in more of a non-dieting space. It's not so much about the kids' weight, but just learning healthier habits and learning to take care of themselves. Please go and do it, because you may feel, a lot of parents do feel shame around having bigger kids. And that's completely understandable, of course, because there's a lot of stigma around being bigger. And also these days, parents get judged on absolutely every single thing that they do. So I would really encourage you to not judge yourself, and find good health professionals that won't judge you either, and get a bit of support, because it is important. But there's absolutely nothing to feel bad about if you do have a bigger kid. There's no need to feel like your health professionals are going to sort of shame you or stigmatize you. They're definitely there to help. And so I think it's just something worth encouraging you to think about. Look, I hope you guys got something out of this. It's good to share my thoughts and how my thoughts are evolving. I sort of feel like if we start off with doubts, we end up with certainties, and our knowledge should change. So I suppose I'm also encouraging you to be a bit fluid in your own thinking. I think it's always good for us to look back at the research and what the experts are telling us, and try and make sense of it so we can sort of find the best way forward. Guys, I think that's tons and tons for us. Thanks for being with us for another Facebook Live. If you're watching this on Facebook, make sure you give us a like so you can get all of the Facebook Lives straight away when they happen. If you're watching this on YouTube, of course, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I will look forward to hearing from you guys soon. If you have any comments, I'll be around for the next little while to have a chat about this stuff. So thank you, everyone. Bye.